Hey everybody, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and today we got to talk about Telegram because that saga on that messaging app shows us that privacy is difficult. Now, at this point, you probably know that Telegram founder Pavel Durov was arrested in France for allegedly allowing, quote, criminal activity to go on undeterred on the messaging app, end quote, which is a nice way of saying there was a whole bunch of illegal stuff going on left and right, and that wasn't good. And Pavel, interestingly enough, got caught because his girlfriend was taking pictures as they were traveling of things like the tail number of the airplane they were on, which allowed authorities to track him, and he'd been tracked for years. So, Pavel, you probably should have taught her good operational security. Clearly you didn't. Now, with this, let's turn to Mia Sato from The Verge, who had a really good write-up on here because this is nuts, and here's what happened. Telegram has been quietly removing language from its FAQ page that basically says private chats were protected and that, quote, we do not process any requests related to them. Now, Telegram spokesperson, as a result of this change, Remy Vaughn, said the app's source code has not changed. Quote, private chats are still private too, although you could always report a new incoming chat to moderators by using block-report. Now, anyone can check Telegram's open source code and see there were no changes. Now, last week, Durov issued his first public statement since his arrest, promising to moderate content more on the platform. That's just a noticeable change in the tone after his company basically initially said they have nothing to hide, quote unquote. Quote, Pavel Durov, Telegram's abrupt increase in user count to 950 million caused growing pains that made it easier for criminals to abuse our platforms. That's why I made it my personal goal to ensure we significantly improve things in this regard. We've already started this process internally, and I will share more details on our progress with you very soon, end quote. And that's kind of like a pointless statement. And the reason being is, even though Telegram's user platforms and counts did explode thanks to things like the war in Ukraine, just the mess with WhatsApp, a whole bunch of other stuff, essentially, there's been always illegal activity going on because it is a messaging app based on privacy, and we'll talk about that shortly here. Now, some of those changes appear to already be taking effect. The company's FAQ page has changed essentially as of last week. So take one section entitled, quote, there's illegal content on Telegram. How do I take it down? That's the question on the FAQ. As of September 5th, Telegram's response to that question read, and I quote, all Telegram chats and group chats are private amongst their participants. We do not process any requests related to them, end quote. But what seems to be on the same day, September 5th, those sentences were removed and replaced with, quote, all Telegram apps have report buttons that let you flag illegal content for our moderators in just a few taps, followed by the instructions, obviously, on how to report messages. And so by virtue of that, they are basically changing that from, hey, anything goes. We don't police or control anything, which has been a standard for a lot of platforms out there that focus on privacy, to, yes, you can now report things, which means other eyeballs outside of that potentially may have issues as well. If you and I are talking or chatting on Telegram and I report you, it seems like Telegram may now have access in some way, shape, or form to that because they would have to verify that you did something terribly illegal, right? And how else are they going to verify that if they can't see the evidence that I'm purporting to have on you doing something illegal with me or to me or whatever? So Telegram spokesperson Vaughn then wrote, and I quote, on Telegram, you could always report messages from any group to moderators. This acts like forwarding. Private chats are still private too, although you could always report a new incoming chat to moderators by using block-report. Anyone can check Telegram's open source code to see there were no changes. The FAQ change only made it clearer how to report on Telegram, including via DSA. The removed language was never related to content reporting. And so by virtue of that, here's what we're talking about. You can report to moderators and essentially forward that, but if you're in the group, then that's really not going anywhere on Telegram, and the moderator has limited control beyond, let's say, blocking or punting somebody from the group, and so Telegram really isn't policing it. Now, this is why it's difficult, because, quite frankly, one of the big issues that we have here is that we need privacy in our lives. We don't want or should have government interference in that, But we also have to understand that we are taking the good with the bad here. And one of the problems that we have is there are criminals out there that will do criminal things, whether they're horrific crimes, minor crimes, and everything in between. The thing is, and this is what I oftentimes think is lost in the conversation, is that the criminal element is not by far the majority. They are by far the minority of what goes on. So in other words, what we are doing and what we are seeing in the world is essentially laws and rules being written to the lowest common denominator in order to essentially help law enforcement and make it easier for governments to essentially intrude on what are private conversations. And so by virtue of that, where is the balance? Because, if I'm using private messaging, I'm not necessarily criming, I might just simply be talking with my friends. And odds are overwhelmingly people are talking to friends, colleagues, whoever they're talking to, and it's not illegal. But if we have a marketing perception out there that governments or law enforcement are putting out that this is a haven for the terrorists and the child traffickers and everything in the world, and those people do exist, don't get me wrong, but again, they're not the majority of us, then the general population starts to look at essentially what would be a private app as something where only nefarious things or only criminal things are going to happen. And that's simply not true. We deserve privacy in the same way that if I were to walk up to 100 people on the street and say, hey, can you give me your social security number or national ID number, your home address, your phone number, all this kind of stuff, you don't know me, they wouldn't give it to me. So why would you want to give it to nondescript people as well? And so I think that this is a really important thing, and it really underscores the issues and problems we have with trying to make privacy basically a default way of being. And if you think about it, before the technological age, privacy was sacrosanct as well, and it was harder for law enforcement to get in. It was always been the cat and mouse game. I go rob the bank with a mask on. They have to do some footwork and some sleuthing to figure out that it was me that robbed the bank, as opposed to simply telling or asking or sending a subpoena to Google to say, give me all of Nick's searches, or I'm Googling how to rob a bank. And so that from that springs up the telegrams and the signals of the world. And quite frankly, we still get access to that through court orders, providing they have access to a device. So it's not like we have to start degrading these services in order to find the terrorists of the world. And I think that's an important lesson that simply isn't made. And so we should not be making, again, laws to the lowest common denominator. And I'll leave you with that thought because quite frankly, if we start really truly losing privacy on the internet, and quite frankly, we've lost a ton of it already, once it's totally gone, we're never getting it back. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please attempt to stay private. Thanks, everybody.